No injuries have been reported. The military ordered the airstrikes after incendiary balloons launched into Israel sparked fires in farming communities. Hamas has tried to pressure Israel to ease the crippling blockade imposed on Gaza since 2007, but Israel has vowed to respond to even minor attacks. Recently, Israel has eased restrictions in Gaza to allow in Qatar-funded fuel and permit increased cross-border commerce. Turkey has formally withdrawn from a landmark international treaty protecting women from violence, but President Recep Tayyip Erdogan insists it won't be a step backwards for women. Hundreds of women demonstrated in Istanbul on Thursday, holding banners calling on Turkey to rejoin the Council of Europe's Istanbul Convention. The framework drawn up in 2011 committed countries to preventing and prosecuting violence against women and domestic abuse. But conservatives in Turkey say the pact goes against family values. Earlier this week, a court appeal to stop the withdrawal was rejected. President Erdogan announced his alternative action plan for combating violence against women, which includes goals to review judicial processes, improve protection services, and gather data on violence.
İtibariyle resmen çekildiğimiz İstanbul Sözleşmesi'ne kadına yönelik şiddetle mücadelede bir geriye gidiş olarak yansıtmaya çalışıyor. Bizim kadına yönelik şiddetle mücadelemiz İstanbul Sözleşmesi ile başlamadığı gibi bu sözleşmeden çekilmeyle de bitecek değildir.
A Hong Kong police officer is recovering after he was attacked with a knife in a busy shopping district on Thursday. A live stream captured the moment of the stabbing and police officers running to their colleague. Police described the 50-year-old attacker as a lone wolf who had been radicalized. He later died after stabbing himself. Hundreds of police had been deployed on Thursday to respond to protesters as the city marked the anniversary of the territory's handover to China. For the past 2 years, authorities have banned the July 1st handover protest, citing pandemic social distancing restrictions.
呢啲行為咧係明顯衝住我哋社會嘅穩定，亦都係罔顧法紀對於今日香港社會，大家都係非常之珍惜來之不易嘅社會嘅安寧咧，係令人非常之遺憾嘅。我亦都得悉咧呢位涉事嘅人咧喺襲擊咗警員之後就自殘亦都係送到醫院據說係不治嘅。警方會全面調查，去睇下佢背後咧係有冇一啲嘅組織。
Let's moving on to other news. 9 civilians, including a number of women, have been killed in an attack by rebels in the city of Beni in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the third attack in the area this week. The military says victims were killed in their homes, while others were taken to the center of the neighborhood before being shot and beaten with machetes. Authorities have dispersed protests by angry residents, demanding the police and military provide better protection to civilians. Police and the military have blamed allied democratic forces rebels for the violence. The region has seen violence for more than 2 decades as armed groups have vied for control of the area's rich mineral resources. The attack follows explosions on Sunday that hit a Catholic church and a market in Beni, injuring 4 people. A non-profit sea rescue group slammed Libya's Coast Guard on Thursday after it witnessed the Libyan maritime authorities in what it described as chasing a crowded migrant boat and shooting in its direction in an apparent effort to stop it from crossing the Mediterranean Sea to Europe. Members of the German non-governmental group Sea-Watch filmed the incident on Wednesday while flying over the area in an observation mission. In the footage, filmed from the plane, a blue wooden boat with a small engine and at least 24 people on board is seen being followed in circles at high speed by the Libyan Coast Guard. During the chase, which occurred in international waters under Malta's search and rescue responsibility, men in uniform on the Libyan vessel can be seen firing at least 2 times towards the boat, with bullets hitting the water close to the boat. Sea-Watch communicated to the Libyan authorities via radio that they were endangering the lives of the people on the blue vessel and urged them to stop shooting. The Libyan Coast Guard replied in broken English that they were trying to rescue the migrants. There was no immediate comment on the incident from Libya, Malta, or the authorities on Lampedusa. And the U.S. military has officially left Bagram airfield in Afghanistan. For nearly 20 years, it was the epicenter of its war to oust the Taliban and hand down the Al-Qaeda perpetrators of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. The airfield has been handed over to the Afghan National Security and Defense Force in its entirety. Afghanistan's district administrator for Bagram says the American departure was done overnight without any coordination with local officials, resulting in local looters storming through the unprotected gates before Afghan forces regained control. The withdrawal from Bagram airfield indicates that the departure of U.S. troops is months ahead of President Joe Biden's September 11th promise. Most NATO soldiers have already quietly exited as of this week. The U.S. has refused to say when the last U.S. soldier would have left Afghanistan. We'll be back shortly after the break with other top stories, and one of them is the U.S. President Joe Biden meets with the families of those dead and missing in last week's condo collapse in Surfside, Florida. Stay with us.
Kenapa sih kita harus berinvestasi di PIK 2? Ada 3 alasan utama. Yang pertama, lokasi PIK 2. Alasan kedua, setiap orang yang membeli PIK 2 dianggap sebagai pemegang saham. Membeli produk PIK 2 memang selalu untung karena harga perdana PIK 2 50% di bawah harga market. Alasan yang ketiga, fasilitas. Di mana fasilitas yang tersedia di PIK 2 jauh lebih banyak dari real estate manapun juga.
Pak Presiden memimpin penanggulangan pandemi ini secara langsung.
Dari menit ke menit, ya, dari jam ke jam, Presiden memantau terus.
Mudah-mudahan akhir Juni ini, ya kan itu baru minggu depan kan, berhenti dia, landai.
Medcom.id, a part of Media Group News.
Pandemi yang berdampak serius dalam kehidupan kita, di sisi lain menyimpan peluang bagi para pencari cuan dalam sektor properti.
Mereka yang bisa melihat peluang di setiap krisis, mereka masuk ke dalam sektor properti, mereka akan mendapatkan panen setelah terjadi krisis.
Info Plus, tren bisnis properti pasca pandemik. Sabtu 3 Juli jam 6 pagi lewat 15 menit. Didukung oleh Editorial Media Indonesia. Opini surat kabar terpercaya hadir di pagi hari Anda. Membahas isu secara tajam dan mengulas peristiwa dengan lebih mendalam. Tampil matang dengan dialog interaktif. Mengajak Indonesia menyikapi permasalahan bangsa dengan terukur dan cerdas. Editorial Media Indonesia, Senin sampai Sabtu, live jam 7:30 pagi. Menjadi jurnalis bukan sekadar profesi, tetapi jalan juang berdedikasi. Untuk mengungkap bukan sekadar memberitakan, untuk menggali bukan sekadar mencari, karena menyuarakan apa yang benar adalah tanggung jawab kami.
Memberikan bantuan
Masyarakat terus memantau.
Agar yang kami upayakan menjadi manfaat, jurnalis Metro TV hadir di semua situasi. The Journalist, setiap Senin jam 8 malam di pekan pertama.
You're back on World News. Indonesia is imposing new restrictions on parts of the country amid a spike of coronavirus cases. President Joko Widodo this week announced emergency restrictions for Java and Bali for 14 days. Starting on Saturday, 100% of non-essential workers will work from home. Restaurants will be reduced to delivery only, houses of worship will close, and schools will do full online learning. The new restrictions are a step up from the previous micro-scale community restrictions. Indonesia is also racing to vaccinate its citizens, targeting 1 million doses a day in July and 2 million doses a day in August. The country hit another record increase in COVID-19 cases on Wednesday, recording 21,807 new infections with a further 467 deaths. The Trump Organization and its chief financial officer have pleaded not guilty to a slew of charges brought on them on Thursday. Charges against the Trump Organization and its CFO, Alan Weisselberg, include tax fraud, scheme to defraud, conspiracy, and falsifying business documents. It is the first criminal case arising from a 2-year investigation into former President Donald Trump's company. Trump himself was not charged and has called the probe with a witch hunt. Weisselberg, who surrendered to authorities on Thursday, has been released without bail. His lawyers say he will fight the charges, and there's no indication he is willing to cooperate. And 3 large wildfires have destroyed several homes and forced mountain communities to evacuate in Northern California as hundreds of firefighters battle the flames in triple-digit heat. One fire, the lava fire, which was ignited by lighting last week, has grown to nearly 80 square kilometers and has only been 25% contained. Meanwhile, the tenant fire that broke out Monday has grown to nearly 40 square kilometers and is expected to advance north toward Oregon. An extraordinary heat wave in the Pacific Northwest has made the fires worse. Forecasters say temperatures are expected to cool off slightly before trending back up. Fire authorities throughout California are also bracing for the 4th of July weekend, urging people not to use fireworks in their celebrations, reminding of the explosive dangers and threat of wildfires. Now to Washington, D.C., where 5 people have been injured after a building under construction collapsed. Firefighters worked for more than 90 minutes to free one man from the rubble, using saws and other equipment to out through wood in other debris that trapped him. The D.C. Fire Department says 4 other construction workers were pulled out of the rubble. All 5 workers have been taken to the hospital and sustained non-life-threatening injuries. U.S. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden were in Surfside, Florida on Thursday, where search and rescue teams are working for an 8th day at the site of partially collapsed condominium building. The bodies of 18 people, including 2 children, have been pulled from the rubble, and more than 140 people are still missing. VOA's White House correspondent Patsy Widakuswara has this report.
It has been 8 days since the collapse of the condominium in Surfside, Florida. Families of the 145 people still missing have been taken to the site to see firsthand what first responders are dealing with. On Thursday, they met with the First Lady and President Joe Biden.
They know that the chances are, as each day goes by, diminish slightly. But at a minimum, they want to recover the bodies. There's a lot of very religious people.
The president also met with first responders.
What's your name?
First responders have been working around the clock, but rescue efforts were halted temporarily Thursday out of concern about the remaining structure's stability. Officials are considering tearing down the remainder of the building to ensure safe operation.
I spoke with the governor early this morning, and we talked about that, and we said that, listen, we agree that if the building's a problem, the building has to disappear.
Some speculate that sea level rise, higher storm surges, and more frequent high tide flooding are deteriorating coastal infrastructure. But Biden said authorities are still investigating the cause of the collapse.
I didn't raise it, but how many of the survivors and how many of the families talked about the impact of global warming? How much it, and they know exactly, but they talked about sea levels rising and about how there were, and the combination of that and the concern about incoming tropical storms.
During his remarks, Biden did not mention infrastructure and climate change, legislative priorities for his administration.
The push for deep investments in infrastructure and the nation's response to climate change is going to be a fight that's waged over days, weeks, months, years ahead. But I think he really wanted to carve out today and have it be about these families and the loss that they've experienced.
Biden said the federal government intends to pay 100% of the cost for local and state governments' response to the tragedy for 30 days. He and First Lady Jill Biden visited the makeshift memorial near the collapsed building before returning to the White House. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News.
As U.S. forces complete their withdrawal from Afghanistan, thousands of Afghans are trying to flee the country before the Taliban takes over. But most Afghans don't have the money for passports or visas.
Imtiaz Muhammad is 19 years old. He supports his large family by selling melons out of a crate perched on his motorcycle. In 4 days, he and 4 friends will leave Afghanistan. They have paid a smuggler to sneak them across the border to Iran and into Turkey. Muhammad earns around $3 a day, although some days he makes no money at all. Large numbers of people have been crowding this passport office in Kabul to get new passports, hoping to secure exit visas. Authorities recognize the issue and say there is a role for the international community in addressing it.
حمایت بین‌المللی جامعه بین‌المللی برای افغانستان همین خودش کافی است. یا نظامیش یا ملکیش هر کدامشان باشه با ما مشکل نیست. هدف ما این است که حمایتش داشته باشیم. البته در دست افغانستان تمام مردم افغانستان هستند. چیزن چی مرد. ولی از حالی که رفتن یاست مردم تشویش دارن.
Afghanistan looks significantly different than it did in 2001 when American troops arrived in the wake of the 9/11 attacks to topple the Taliban. Today there is internet, women are in the workforce, and there are mixed schools. The Taliban have sought to reassure Afghans they have nothing to fear. But standing in line at the passport office, Sadaf Atayi remains unconvinced.
به خاطر آمدن طالبا بسیار نگران هستیم ما خود ما به همین خاطر ما می‌خواهیم که پیش از اینکه اوضاع وخیم‌تر شود از اینجا بتانیم خود بیرون بکنیم.
Outside the Turkish visa center in Kabul city center, the road is crowded with expensive vehicles belonging to wealthier people seeking a way out. Since the announcement of the American withdrawal, the Turkish embassy in Kabul has been inundated with thousands of visa applications. But poorer Afghans like Mahmand, the melon seller, must rely on more informal and potentially more dangerous ways out of the country. He, like hundreds of young people, will board buses to the western province of Nimroz, cross illegally into Iran, and from there journey to Turkey, and finally to Europe, where an uncertain future awaits.
And World News will be back shortly after the break. Stay with us.
Pandemi yang berdampak serius dalam kehidupan kita, di sisi lain menyimpan peluang bagi para pencari cuan dalam sektor properti.
Mereka yang bisa melihat peluang di setiap krisis, mereka masuk ke dalam sektor properti, mereka akan mendapatkan panen setelah terjadi krisis.
Info Plus, tren bisnis properti pasca pandemik. Sabtu 3 Juli jam 6 pagi lewat 15 menit. Didukung oleh Media Indonesia, lebih dari sekadar surat kabar. Hadir melalui beragam platform, cetak, e-paper, dan online. Dengan program di media sosial yang kuat dalam konten. Dan pengembangan bisnis yang terarah. Dapatkan informasi lengkap melalui 51 tahun Media Indonesia, Reka Cipta Indonesia. Kesehatan yang sudah tidak optimal tentu akan berakibat pada kualitas hidup Anda. Ilmu pengetahuan yang semakin berkembang dan teknologi yang semakin maju membawa sejumlah inovasi di bidang medis.
Setelah diperiksa lab, gulanya tinggi. Curiga, hati-hati, ini adalah salah satu tanda masalah pada jantung.
Jangan anggap enteng yang namanya stroke. Halo pemirsa, apa kabar? Senang sekali saya Tantri Murdoko dan juga Kak Ronald bisa kembali menjumpai Anda di Go Healthy, cara tepat hidup sehat.
Bincang-bincang seputar dunia kreatif, ide, dan inspirasi pekerja kreatif, baik dari Indonesia maupun Amerika. Kami suguhkan spesial untuk Anda.
Ketemu lagi dengan saya Naratama di sini. Di program ini kita akan mengupas berbagai macam cerita di balik layar.
Kreatif Talk, setiap hari Senin dan Selasa, mulai 15 Februari, jam 6:30 malam. Hanya di Magna Channel.
Bangun pagi dengan suasana hati baik, siap memenangi hari dan dengan semangat untuk menyapa Selamat Pagi Indonesia. Kami siap hari ini. Apapun tantangan yang datang saat kita menjalani hari, pasti membuat kita menjadi lebih baik. Dan hey, kita sudah punya segudang info baru yang inspiratif dan seru. Lengkap ada di sini, di pagi hari. Di Selamat Pagi Indonesia, setiap Senin sampai Sabtu, jam 8:30 pagi.
KSP Muldoko telah keluar dari akal sehat.
Kelompok yang menyerang anggota ini diidentifikasi sebagai Laskar Khusus.
Banyak informasi simpang siur di sekitar kita.
Ada pihak-pihak yang telah mengambil suatu sikap dan telah membocorkan informasi.
Mana fakta sebenarnya?
Orang itulah terorisnya, bukan Papua terorisnya.
Saya nggak mau bunuh dia, di luar dugaan, parah pas kena leher.
Saya akan konfirmasi di Kick Andy Double Check.
And in our top entertainment news tonight, Don Cheadle and LeBron James attend the Space Jam: A New Legacy premiere. Amber Heard says she has become a mom and did it on her own terms as a single parent. NYC concert lineup Springsteen, Paul Simon, and Jennifer Hudson. And that's wrapping up our show tonight. I'm Iqbal Himawan. Thank you for watching and see you on the next week days.
Actor Don Cheadle and basketball star LeBron James recently hit the premiere of their latest film, Space Jam: A New Legacy, at the Six Flags theme park in Valencia, California. And now a little bit of gossip. I'm still seething with anger with Bill Cosby's overturned conviction. Amber Heard says she has become a mom and did it on my own terms, quote, as a single parent. In an Instagram post, the actor said she welcomed daughter Una Page Heard on April 8th. A photo of Heard with the baby nestled against her accompanied Thursday's announcement. The actor has faced a tumultuous period of her life with her 2015 to 2017 marriage to Johnny Depp, involving a spate of legal actions. Last year, Depp lost a libel case against a British newspaper that accused him of domestic violence, with the judge ruling the allegations were substantially correct. In March, a British court refused Depp permission to appeal the ruling that he assaulted Heard, saying his attempt to overturn the decision had no real prospect of success. Depp also is suing Heard for $50 million in Virginia over a Washington Post op-ed essay that she wrote about domestic violence. The trial in that case was recently delayed until April 2022. Why is everybody so violent in Hollywood?
Three amazing artists have stepped forward and said they want to be part of the comeback in New York City.
And time for some happy news again. Bruce Springsteen, Paul Simon, and Jennifer Hudson will headline an August concert in Central Park, marking the city's comeback from the coronavirus pandemic, Mayor Bill de Blasio announced Thursday. De Blasio announced last month that producer Clive Davis would recruit an all-star lineup for a Central Park concert in August. Really? Too soon, guys. Too soon. No exact date has been announced, thank the Lord. De Blasio said more performers will be announced in the coming week. The concert will come 30 years after Simon's memorable August 15, 1991 Central Park concert, which was recorded and released as a live album and concert film. Springsteen's return to Broadway last weekend was itself a step in the city's recovery from the pandemic. The mayor said Hudson, an Oscar and Grammy winner, is, quote, someone who captures the grit and determination that we're all feeling as we fight through this crisis.
Metro TV.
Kita semua tahu dan merasakan perekonomian Indonesia saat ini masih menghadapi berbagai tantangan. pandemi pun membuat situasi kita semakin tidak mudah. Kita bertahan seberdaya apa yang kita bisa. Memanfaatkan peluang apa saja dan aset yang paling kecil pun jadi sangat bernilai buat kita. Ketahui arah dan kebijakan dalam membangkitkan ekonomi kita bersama saya dan narasumber paling kompeten hanya di Economic Challenges.
Beragam info menarik yang dekat dengan kearifan lokal masyarakat Indonesia, kami kemas secara apik, ringan, juga menghibur.
Kesadaran untuk mengingat Allah supaya melahirkan ridho.
Hati nurani itu akan menjadi saksi.
Usparagam Indonesia, Sabtu dan Minggu jam 5 sore di Magna Channel.
Momen terbaik Ibu Susi di Susi Cek Ombak.
Yang membuat dunia politik menarik untuk Bapak ini apa, Pak?
Kopiku saya tenggelamin.
Ini waktu Bu Susi lagi random banget. Nah, kalau ini pas ngerjain menteri.
Dekat apa Pak dengan Pak Sandi dan Pak Erick? Boleh ditelepon?
Ya, nggak ada yang ngangkat nih, teleponnya kacau.
Siap Ibu Hos, saya lupa.
Susi Cek Ombak, setiap Rabu jam 8 malam.
Inilah headline news pukul 1 waktu Indonesia Barat. Polda Metro Jaya Jumat sore melaksanakan apel pasukan dalam rangka pelaksanaan PPKM darurat yang akan dimulai pada Sabtu 3 Juli 2021. Apel Aman Nusa 2 penanganan COVID-19 berlangsung di lapangan presisi Polda Metro Jaya dengan diikuti ratusan personel gabungan TNI Polri, Dishub, dan Pol PP. Apel dipimpin langsung oleh Kapolda Metro Jaya, Irjen Pol Muhammad Fadil Imran. Turut hadir Gubernur DKI Jakarta Anies Baswedan, Pangdam Jaya, Majen TNI Mulyo Aji, dan Kepala Kejati DKI Jakarta Asri Agung. Kapolda menyampaikan tidak akan mengizinkan masyarakat beraktivitas di luar ruangan, terkecuali hanya untuk aktivitas penting. Mulai pukul 00 Sabtu dini hari, seluruh pintu masuk Jakarta akan dilakukan pemeriksaan ketat. Kapolda juga akan membentuk 7 satgas khusus yang akan memperkuat penanganan COVID-19 di wilayah DKI Jakarta. Jelang pemberlakuan PPKM darurat Sabtu, Kepolisian Resor Kota Besar Bandung, Jawa Barat memperketat penjagaan di sejumlah lokasi. Aparat juga membubarkan warga yang masih nekat datang dan berkumpul di kawasan Jalan Asia Afrika Bandung. Penjagaan ketat dilakukan oleh Kepolisian Resor Kota Besar Bandung, Jawa Barat di lokasi Ring 1 jalan yang ditutup mulai pukul 18 waktu Indonesia Barat. Salah satunya di kawasan Jalan Asia Afrika Kota Bandung, Jawa Barat. Usai melakukan penutupan, polisi melakukan patroli dan himbauan kepada warga untuk tidak memasuki jalanan yang telah ditutup. Polisi juga membubarkan paksa warga yang masih berkumpul di sejumlah lokasi. Penutupan di ruas jalan di Kota Bandung mulai dari Ring 1, 2, dan 3 masih tetap diberlakukan kepolisian sebagai langkah menekan mobilitas warga, terlebih saat pemberlakuan PPKM darurat hari Sabtu. Demikianlah headline news. Headline news akan kembali 1 jam mendatang.
Breaking News Metro TV.
Gempa bermagnitudo 6,1 mengguncang sebagian wilayah.
Persija Jakarta sukses menjuarai Piala Menpora 2021.
Pimpinan media Grup News bertemu Wakil Presiden Kiai Haji Ma'ruf Amin.
Pemirsa, setelah viral di media sosial, 32 warga negara India ditolak masuk Indonesia.
Pemirsa, Metro TV memberikan santunan kepada anak yatim piatu di Yayasan Masjid At-Taqwa.
Dengarkan Metro TV di radio, more than just news. Streaming sekarang di metrotvnews.com dan medcom.id.
Hello and happy Friday to you. Welcome to Asia Prime on Metro Globe Network, coming to you live from Jakarta, Indonesia. I'm Ralph Tambubolon.
And I'm Amanda Chininta. For the next 2 hours, we have primetime stories from all over the world.
And let's check out tonight's top stories.
Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam condemned a stabbing attack on police Thursday night on the 100th year anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing.
Australia announced plans to reduce commercial passenger arrivals due to the emerging risk of the COVID-19 Delta variant.
Foreigners in Bali who got caught violating health protocol will be deported immediately.
We begin from Bali, where the provincial government has imposed micro-scale social restrictions by July 1st, earlier than the central government's implementation plan for the islands July 3rd, Java and Bali.
The restrictions is based on Bali Governor's circular letter combined with socialization by officials. During the restrictions, domestic travelers must provide negative result of PCR tests when traveling to Bali by air and or rapid antigen tests by land transportation. The restrictions aims to contain the Delta variant and will come into effect on July 3rd to 20th in Java and Bali. We go to Turkey next, where hundreds of women demonstrated in the Turkish city of Istanbul on Thursday, on the day that Turkey formally withdrew from a landmark international treaty protecting women from violence.
Protesters in the city's main pedestrian thoroughfare held colorful banners, feminist and rainbow flags, played music and shouted slogans such as, quote, "Manhood is more lethal than corona," end quote. The government responded with heavy police presence as women's groups continue to protest. Police closed off the area, but later briefly removed barricades to allow a short march. Now, President Erdogan has insisted that the withdrawal from the agreement of the Istanbul Convention will not be a step backwards for women.
Similar protests were held in other Turkish cities. Erdogan ended the country's participation in the convention with a surprise decree in March, prompting condemnation from women's rights groups and Western countries.
On to India now, where it has confirmed over 400,000 deaths from COVID as the Delta variant infects hundreds of thousands daily. Now, this number is second to the United States and Brazil.
Health Ministry said 853 people died in the past 24 hours, raising the total fatalities to 400,312 since the pandemic began. Now authorities are preparing for another possible wave of infection around September. As of today, over 340 million doses has been administered since mid-January, but it still means that less than 5% of India's population are fully vaccinated. Health Minister Harshvardhan said on Wednesday that vaccination speed has picked up after the federal government started providing 75% of vaccines free to states.
About 2 billion doses could be available by December, with India's two main suppliers, Serum Institute and Bharat Biotech, ramping up production and 5 other vaccines potentially being made available in the coming months. On to Hong Kong now, where Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam condemned a stabbing attack on police Thursday as she returned to the city after celebrating the 100th year anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing. Lam described the incident to be very regrettable.
呢啲行為咧係明顯衝住我哋社會嘅穩定，亦都係罔顧法紀啊！對於今日香港社會，大家都係非常之珍惜來之不易嘅社會嘅安寧咧，係令人非常之遺憾嘅。我亦都得悉咧呢位涉事嘅人咧喺襲擊咗警員之後就自殘啊！亦都係送到醫院，據說係不治嘅。警方會全面調查，去睇下佢背後咧係有冇一啲嘅組織。
Meanwhile, a Hong Kong police officer was attacked with a knife late Thursday in Causeway Bay. The attack occurred as the city marks the Communist Party anniversary. Several police officers were seen running, tending to their colleague in the busy shopping district where hundreds of police have been deployed throughout the day to stop Hong Kong people protesting on the 24th anniversary of the territory's return to China. The officer was injured in the attack and was sent to the hospital for treatment. The attacker later died after stabbing himself, and he was later described by the authorities as a lone wolf terrorist attack. The attack occurred as China's Communist Party marked the centenary of its founding. Hong Kong police tried to stop people from protesting in the popular shopping district of Causeway Bay Thursday afternoon for the anniversary of Hong Kong's return to China. The traditional 1st of July protest march was banned by the police, who shut down Victoria Park, its usual starting point just next to Causeway Bay, and then hundreds of police set up cordons around shopping centers and holiday crowds. A lone protester waving a British flag, pensioner Alexander Wong, was bundled into a police van. Police stopped and searched other passers-by and announced that they had arrested at least 4 people in Causeway Bay and 11 in another popular shopping district, Mongkok in Kowloon.
根據香港法例第599G 章預防及控制疾病禁止群組聚集規例規定，任何人士於定。
條梯，唔好喺度阻礙其他行人過路。呢個係警方俾你指示，聽唔聽到？
根據香港法例第599G 章預防及控制疾病禁止群組聚集規例規定，任何人士。
Australia announced plans to reduce commercial passenger arrivals by half due to the emerging risk of the COVID-19 Delta variant as parts of the country emerge from lockdown Friday. Australia will cap weekly arrivals at 3,000 down from 6,000 by July 14th to reduce pressure on hotel quarantine. Australia already has some of the world's tightest border restrictions aimed at keeping COVID-19 out. The new restrictions add to problems faced by 34,000 Australian citizens and permanent residents stranded overseas and registered with the government as wanting to come home. The government will charter more airlines to repatriate Australians, but the reduced limit on commercial passenger arrivals could continue until next year.
These restrictions on vaccinated residents, such as lockdowns and border controls, that lockdowns would only occur in extreme circumstances to prevent escalating hospitalisation and fatality, to restore inbound passenger caps at that time to previous levels for unvaccinated returning travellers, and then even larger caps for those who are vaccinated. To temporarily reduce commercial inbound passenger arrivals to all major ports by 50% from current caps to reduce the pressure on quarantine facilities due to the increased risks of the Delta strain of the virus.
Meanwhile, in Australia's state of New South Wales, COVID-19 outbreak has risen by 31 cases on Friday, as authorities in neighbouring Queensland extended Brisbane's lockdown by another day. New South Wales Gladys Berejiklian say the high numbers reflect the days around when the lockdown was announced last week. Several cities in Queensland State and the Northern Territory came out of lockdown on Friday, but the Queensland capital Brisbane and the neighbouring Moreton Bay area would remain in lockdown until Saturday, after a mother and daughter tested positive in Brisbane. Almost half the Australian population locked down since last week due to clusters mostly of the Delta variant.
Because our contact tracers need that extra time, we need another 24 hours. So I'm really asking people in the Brisbane City Council and Moreton Bay local government areas, the lockdown will continue for 24 hours. Now, we will come back early tomorrow morning once our contact tracers get on top of this, and we'll look at the case numbers overnight. So I want to thank everyone for doing the right thing. But as you can see, we've just got a situation at the moment that has just come in, and we really need to give the people, our contact tracers, the time to do that.
Paris airport workers blocked a busy terminal of Charles de Gaulle Airport on Friday. The protest on pay caused flight delays and confusion for passengers. Riot police with helmets and shields fanned out and fired pepper spray to try to disperse the protesters at the terminal used for international travel. Hundreds of union activists banging drums and tooting horns blocked the terminal's passport control area and left hundreds of stranded passengers. They have been negotiating with Paris airport management over pay cuts linked to the collapse in air travel amid the pandemic. The management of the Paris airport network says revenue dropped 80% last year and that it is trying to avoid layoffs by trimming fat instead. Unions announced strikes and protests through Monday, just as many French families leave on summer holidays.
The national film industry has been hard hit by the pandemic. The question is, how do they bounce back? Stay with us for the details. You're watching Asia Prime.
Tiny home building is a big business.
The architecture is modern and the landscape is very minimalist.
So, you think you're an amazing cook.
My dream is to become a professional chef.
Mau tahu resep rahasia keluarga selebriti?
Ada rasa wanginya juga.
Mau jadi koki andalan di rumah?
When I was about 20 years old, I spent several months traveling through India, and we naturally would be eating Indian food. Cooking is just not a vocation; it's a calling.
Mau cari inspirasi interior?
1, 2, 3.
And if you want to live tiny,
Less house, more fun.
This is so fun.
It's so cute.
It's so amazing! Oh, that's so cool.
Atau ada niatan renovasi rumah?
We all love to create our dream home. The dream becomes reality.
Wow. Dapetin semua inspirasinya di Mola Hour. Senin sampai Jumat, mulai jam 4 hingga jam 6 sore. Hanya di Magna Channel.
Untuk meningkatkan kualitas siaran, Metro TV migrasi ke satelit merah putih Telkom 4 dengan parameter pastikan tetap terinformasi dengan tayangan lebih jernih bersama Metro TV.
Islam adalah rahmat bagi semesta alam. Ia memberikan petunjuk bagi manusia dalam menjalani kehidupan lewat Al-Quran.
Sejatinya kitabul ilmi perlu dipahami dan dimaknai dengan benar, lalu diimplementasikan dalam keseharian.
Saya ajak Anda memetik kebaikan Al-Quran dan memahami ilmu Islam bersama alim ulama bangsa. Saksikan Hasanah Islam setiap hari Minggu pukul 2 siang waktu Indonesia Barat.
Evolusi tiada henti mengarungi lautan
Throughout the pandemic, the entertainment industry is one of the most hard-hit sectors in the country.
And to talk about this more, joining us tonight is Camilla Andini, Indonesian award-winning film director. Good evening, Camilla.
Good evening.
Hi, Camilla.
Hi.
As we know, the film industry in Indonesia is one of the most hard-hit sector throughout this pandemic. Now, we want to know, how are you guys holding up?
Well, yeah, we all know it's been tough for us, not only for the filmmakers, of course, for the whole industry overall. During these past 2 years, there are some times when we could do shootings with protocols, and a few weeks ago even we could have some movies premiered and released in Indonesia, but then we all know this is the second time we have the cinema closed down again, so yeah, it's been tough.
So tell us, how frustrating is this for you and the industry workers in the movie industry, considering that now, well, as of like last month, things are starting to pick up, and now the government is tightening restrictions again. Cinemas are about to close again. Tell us, how do you adapt or react to this?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have so much hope the last few weeks. For the last 2 years, we know there are some movies that is on hold right now to be released. But then the cinema is open, it's starting to live again. We have some hope, some projects is already wanted to shoot this month, and then it closed again. As a filmmaker, of course, I have two perspectives on this. The first one, as a citizen, I know that this might be unnecessary things to do. We want everyone to be at home and safe. But on the other hand, we are losing our biggest distribution platform here. And we are fully dependent on OTT right now, OTT platform. And yeah, to be losing our biggest distribution platform is never easy for the business, for this investment and so on. And also in film industry, we all know there are so many daily workers as well that is really depend on shootings, productions. And if we cannot shoot, and it affects a lot in their daily life.
So were there like any projects that were in the works, say, the beginning of this year before the so-called the second wave hit? And tell us about the projects or plans from July onwards towards the end of this year that has to be put on hold because of the second tightening of restrictions now.
Yeah. Well, me, myself, I have two feature projects on my hand right now. The first one I shoot just before the pandemic in 2019. And then the second one, I just shoot it last March with the very much protocols involved. And yeah, we are hoping to release the film at the end of this year. So we were quite happy when the cinema was open. And the other one should release next year. But because of this condition, we have to go through things again where is the right way to release the film. And I think also a lot of films is waiting to be released.
Kamala, we want to talk about some of your movies, some of the works that you've done. We know that two of your movies won international award. They are Skala Nisaka, or The Seen and Unseen. It won the 68th Berlin International Film Festival, and the other one is Laut Bercerita, or Mirror Never Lies. It won China International Children Film Festival. Now it shows, I mean, we can say that now Indonesia film industry actually have plenty of good qualities that can compete internationally. How do you view this? Do you think we are at that level yet?
Okay. First, I have to clarify a bit. My film is Laut Bercermin, not Bercerita, which I have to clarify because there's another film in that title. Speaking of, are we in that level yet? I think creatively we are in that level. I have no doubt on that. But industry-wise, we still have a lot of things to do. We still lack of consistency in terms of art movies that goes to festivals. Up until now, Indonesia, we only have 1 film or 2 films per year. Sometimes there are no films in the festival per year compared to other countries where they have much more amount of film produced in the art house sections every year. So in terms of that, we still have a lot of things to do.
And how do you think the government is helping you guys achieve that?
Well, they support a lot of us in terms of travel grants and all, but I think it's not enough to enhance the more production of the film. I mean, we all know that film needs a big investment to it, and it's a lot of money involved. And to increase the amount of production, it needs so much more than supports for travel grants and a little bit of funding in here and that. Yeah.
Right. Okay, Camila, we were talking earlier about distribution platforms and how it's very difficult now that cinemas are closing again, that the movie industry locally is losing one of its biggest distribution channels. Now, what about streaming services as an alternative? Do you think it's being used optimally now to distribute Indonesian movies?
Yes, OTT is now a very promising platform. I think we all are actually depends on it in this situation. And the game changed a lot during this pandemic. So yeah, OTT is something that it's a new game in film industry. But on another hand as well, there are also something that threatens us with this distribution as well, not about the platform, but about the piracy that comes within. Because with the OTT platforms, up until now, several Indonesian films that is released in OTT, on the second day or on the third day it release is already pirated. And links goes everywhere, and still we couldn't have much number of audience in the platform, and that's not very good for Indonesian movies to be seen from outside Indonesia as well, because usually OTT platforms, they come here looking for Indonesian audience, so they produce movies with some investment. But when no one see it, because people prefer to watch it in the links and in the pirated way, then sooner or later we are afraid that they will lose trust on us as well in that case.
Now, as a filmmaker, tell us, which one do you prefer, one or the other, not just economics aside, from the aesthetic point of view? Do you opt for the streaming platforms, or do you actually make movies specifically geared up for people to watch on the big screen in the movie theaters?
For my personal picks up, I love cinema, and most of my movie I make it to be watched in the big screen. But I think the cinema language also moves. I mean, from time to time we are moving, and there are always new things coming up, and we cannot go back in time. As a filmmaker, as an artist, this is also our job to cope up with new things, and then to learn and to search ourselves more and more in a different medium, and then to push us to get different discipline and mediums as well. So I think this is something that's challenging for me as an artist. Despite its advantages and disadvantages, I still see it as a challenging things. But for personal picks, of course, I love cinema as its finest. Yeah.
Right, of course, we all, who doesn't enjoy going to the movies, because it's a whole experience of its own. I mean, I personally miss it so much since the pandemic. Now, we want to know do you see, as a filmmaker, is there, you think, a shift in theme that's being chosen for Indonesian motion picture? Because I think we can observe that there's been a lot of new documentary or films that are focusing on humanitarian issues ever since the pandemic began. What's your view on this?
Yeah, I can see this as well as an audience. I mean, we all know as an audience, our behavior during the pandemic is changed as well. I mean, we are staying at home, we need entertainment, we watch many things at home. And our likes suddenly change as well. We watch things that we never watched before. People who doesn't watch Korean films right now, we watch Korean films, or the other way around. People who didn't watch documentaries right now, they watch documentaries. We want more things, we want more options right now because of the situation, that's the frustrating situation. So as a creator, we also realize this, and of course, this is the time for Indonesian filmmakers to create more and provide more option for its audience. In the past, maybe because of mostly film production based on the ratings, on the number of audience, people tends to make something that is just which the audience wants. But right now, with the OTT platform and the needs of wide range of variation of entertainment, I think it's time to make some more things.
Yes, and of course we wish you the best of luck for that. Now, Camila, in your view, is there anything specific that the government or maybe the film community can do in order to keep the ball rolling, specifically for the group of people in the film industry who we know are suffering throughout the pandemic?
Yeah, I think we just needed to be creative, really, to create stories and then to make a production really effective as well, to make effective stories as well. We just really needed to be very creative in this situation, and we needed more collaboration as well. I mean, we only have each other in this situation, all people in the Indian industry. So it's time to support each other as well. We hope that the government also support us in any way they could in the situation. But I think this collaboration is something that we're looking forward to.
All right, so one last thing before we let you go, Camila, you're surrounded by filmmakers in their own right in your inner circle. Your father, Gary Nugroho, is a renowned film director, and your husband, Ifa, is also a filmmaker who has won many awards. Can you share with us how are they coping with this situation, and do they have any future projects lined up?
Yeah, we are coping as much as we could. As I said before, we did some collaboration. We expand our way of making things as well. My father right now is making more theater than he ever did before, because theater also right now has to do their way virtually. So a lot of collaboration with filmmakers in this case. So he's been doing that, and he's preparing also his next movie. And my husband, Ifa, who's also produced my films, he also has another film that is on hold right now. I mean, it's in post-production, but waiting to be released as well. And we just did a collaboration to make a limited series called Hitam, which we did it during the pandemic, very short, in a very short time, but it been received well in the audience as well. So this kind of collaboration, I think, will create something new in film industry. I hope it will long last.
Yeah, so we hope you can execute all of those projects in the future and keep on being creative amidst today's challenges. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Camila Andini. Thank you for being with us on Asia Prime.
And foreigners in Bali who got caught violating health protocols will be deported immediately. The details is next. You're watching Asia Prime on Metro Globe Network.
Warnai hari-hari Anda dengan nuansa tayangan kami yang inspiratif,
there is something beautiful in difference,
atraktif,
orders ready,
penuh ide-ide kreatif,
oh that's so cool,
dan yang bakal bikin suasana makin rileks. Semuanya bisa dinikmati di Magna Channel melalui TV digital Anda.
Olahraga menjadi salah satu penopang hidup sehat. Kejuaraan olahraga yang digelar di seluruh belahan dunia pun selalu sukses dalam daya pikat. Kompetisi yang ketat dan pertunjukan sportivitas yang hebat bisa Anda saksikan dalam Metro Sport setiap hari live jam 10 malam.
Welcome back to Asia Prime. Provincial government of Bali has decided to impose emergency status of restrictions on community activities, or PPKM, starting July 1st, earlier than the central government's implementation plan on July 3rd for islands Java and Bali.
The implementation of the restrictions is based on Bali Governor's circular letter, which is then combined with socialization efforts by officials. During the implementation of the restrictions, domestic travelers must provide a negative result of PCR tests when traveling to Bali by air and of rapid antigen tests by land transportation. The Indonesian government imposes restrictions on community activities this month in order to curb the rapid spread of coronavirus, particularly after the emergence of the Delta variant and others, which is said to be more infectious. Meanwhile, President Joko Widodo says the restrictions will come into effect July 3rd to the 20th in the Java and Bali Islands. Meanwhile, foreign nationals who are staying or visiting Bali will be deported immediately if found violating health protocols.
The firm measure will be taken during the implementation of emergency status of restrictions on community activities. Bali provincial government has begun the implementation of the restrictions since July 1st, earlier than the central government's implementation, which will begin July 3rd to 20th. Previously, for those who violate the health protocol, will be a fine of 1 million rupiah or $68 US, but the regulation is cancelled after the implementation of the emergency restrictions, according to a statement from Provincial Justice and Human Rights Department. The Justice and Human Rights Department is overseeing several units, including the immigration offices. Bali is Indonesia's most popular tourist destination. Many foreigners decide to stay on the island's digital nomad or to do their work remotely, or are stranded due to the pandemic.
In the public area, in the outside, yes, in the when they drive. Yes, but if you in that.
The statistics in Indonesia recorded 24.48% increase of foreign tourists in May 2021 compared to April the same year. However, this achievement is lower than the same period last year.
Head of the Statistics Agency Indonesia, Margo Yuwono, on Thursday says in May there are 155,600 visitors to Indonesia. Travel restrictions due to the COVID pandemic contributes to the data, as visitors from East Timor dominate the number of foreign visitors in May. This according to Margo Yuwono. The number of domestic flight passengers declined 12% month to month, but rose significantly compared to the same period last year. About 1 million AstraZeneca vaccine doses arrived in Indonesia Thursday. These vaccines are grant from Japan to Indonesia.
In total, Indonesia has secured almost 100 million vaccine doses from various sources, including about 10 million from AstraZeneca at the moment. The arrival of about 1 million vaccine doses at Soekarno-Hatta Airport in Tangerang, Banten is the first batch from the government of Japan as a grant or commitment to Indonesia. The vaccine grant is a positive result of the Indonesia-Japan bilateral relation. The additional vaccine doses support the Indonesian government's plan to accelerate its national vaccination program, targeting 181 million population to get at least one shot of vaccine by the end of this year. The Indonesian Navy deploys 2 of its warships to be used as vaccination locations for residents of the Thousand Island Regency in Jakarta.
Warships KRI Celurit and KRI Surik became vaccination centers for those island residents who are mostly fishermen. Deployment of the 2 ships is part of the Indonesian military real participation in supporting the national vaccination program. Earlier, President Widodo has called the Indonesian military and national police to work together with related government institutions and agencies, including with the health ministry, in order to achieve the government target of 1 million jabs daily starting this July. The Navy placed at least 8 vaccinators to assist a local state-run medical clinic staffs to inoculate residents of the Thousand Islands Regency. Meanwhile, for residents who are not able to get into the ships, Navy officials went off the ships and vaccinate them on shore. Indonesia's National Agency of Drug and Food Control, or BPOM, has issued its emergency use authorization for the Moderna vaccine, making Moderna the first mRNA vaccine that gets the permit in the country.
Head of the BPOM, Penny Lukito, in a virtual press conference on Friday explains the Moderna vaccine enters Indonesia through COVAX facility mechanism. The Moderna vaccine is developed by the U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority. The vaccine is part of U.S. assistance to Indonesia's national vaccination program. The Moderna vaccines will be used for inoculating aged 18-plus population. It has the efficacy of up to 94.1% for people under 65 years old and 86.4% for age 65 plus. This type of vaccine can be given to population with comorbid diseases based on clinical tests, BPOM said, but it is not able to be used for child immunization.
Dan juga tentunya dengan antar industri farmasi masing-masing sehingga bisa segera kita mendatangkan vaksin dalam jumlah yang secukup-cukupnya sehingga kita bisa mencapai herd immunity atau jumlah.
Indonesia experiences its first deflation since the COVID pandemic hit the country last year. Price reduced for a number of agriculture commodities, and this has contributed to deflation in June. This according to the Statistics Indonesia.
Bulan Juni ini terjadi deflasi sebesar 0,16%. Dengan demikian, maka terjadi inflasi di tahun kalender itu sebesar 0,74%, dan juga inflasi tahunannya menjadi 1,33%. Kalau kita perhatikan dari 90 kota yang kita amati perkembangan harganya, pada bulan Juni 2021 ini terdapat 56 kota yang mengalami deflasi dan 34 kota mengalami inflasi.
Arsyad Rashid, currently President Director of energy company Indica, is officially inaugurated as the chairman of Indonesia's Chamber of Commerce or Kadin during the Chamber's national meeting on Thursday in Kendari, Southeast Sulawesi.
Arsyad was appointed by the chamber through an internal consensus prior to the national meeting. Arsyad replaces Rosan Ruslani and will hold the position for the next 5 years. Her opponent Anindya Bakri is elected as head of advisory council of the chamber. Arsyad says supporting the government vaccination program will be Kadin's priority for now.
Membuat saya sakit. Saya berpikir, apakah ini akhir dari nama-nama calon itu? Tapi karena
Shares traded higher Friday despite the infrastructure slowing down due to the government's response to COVID-19 restrictions. Jessica Wulandari has more.
Index closed higher, and if we see health sector up 1.09% and the other side infrastructure down 1.3%. It is because the government responded to the COVID-19 cases with the implementation of restrictions on people's mobility. And if we see today, President Joko Widodo also told restriction will be implemented on 3rd until 20th July on Java and also Bali. And if we see the other side, monthly deflation in June 2021 is 0.16%. It is also affected the index performance. Deflation in June caused by the dropping price in food, beverage, and tobacco. And the other side, transportation also down 0.71%. And the other side, if we see the increase of CPO commodity price also affect index today. Today, CPO price in the Malaysia exchange have increased 4%, and the increase of CPO prices because of India's policy allowing the import of processed CPO products for 6 months. And if we see today, rupiah closed down, it is because the movement of the influenced by the policy of the government that will be implemented on restrictions on people's mobility. And if we see the policy become the government's response, see a significant COVID-19 cases in the country. And additionally, investors are also focusing on U.S. labor report, which will be released on tomorrow, on Friday, and are predicted to be higher than the market expectation. And this is potential sentiment still limited interest to buy gold prices. From Jakarta, I'm Jessica Wandari reporting for Metro TV.
Stay with us for more here on Asia Prime, including Achilles, the psychic cat, predicting who will win, Spain or Switzerland, in the Euro 2020 quarterfinal matches. Stay with us.
Big business.
The architecture is modern and the landscape is very minimalist.
So, you think you're an amazing cook.
My dream is to become a professional chef.
Mau tahu resep rahasia keluarga selebriti?
Ada rasa wanginya juga.
Mau jadi koki andalan di rumah?
When I was about 20 years old, I spent several months traveling through India and naturally would be eating Indian food. Cooking is just not a vocation, it's a calling.
Mau cari inspirasi interior?
1, 2, 3. And if you want to live tiny,
Less house, more fun.
This is so fun.
It's so cute.
It's so amazing! Oh, that's so cool.
Atau ada niatan renovasi rumah?
All love to create our dream home. The dream becomes reality.
Wow. Dapetin semua inspirasinya di Mola Hour. Senin sampai Jumat, mulai jam 4 hingga jam 6 sore. Hanya di Magna Channel.
Bangun pagi dengan suasana hati baik, siap memenangi hari dan dengan semangat untuk menyapa Selamat Pagi Indonesia. Kami siap hari ini. Apapun tantangan yang datang saat kita menjalani hari, pasti membuat kita menjadi lebih baik. Dan hey, kita sudah punya segudang info baru yang inspiratif dan seru. Lengkap ada di sini, di pagi hari. Di Selamat Pagi Indonesia, setiap Senin sampai Sabtu, jam 8:30 pagi.
Warnai hari-hari Anda dengan nuansa tayangan kami yang inspiratif,
There is something beautiful in difference.
atraktif,
Orders ready.
penuh ide-ide kreatif,
Oh, that's so cool.
dan yang bakal bikin suasana makin rileks. Semuanya bisa dinikmati di Magna Channel melalui TV digital Anda.
Welcome back to Asia Prime. Thousands of people were evacuated from villages around a rumbling volcano near the Philippine capital Friday. Officials said they face another dilemma of ensuring emergency shelters will not become epicenters of COVID-19 infections.
The alert was raised to 3 on a 5-level scale after a Taal volcano blasted a dark gray plume into the sky Thursday. Level 3 means magma is near or at the surface, and activity could lead to hazardous eruption in weeks. Level 5 means a life-threatening eruption is occurring that can endanger communities, and people are asked to stay away from a small island in a scenic lake where Taal sits and is considered a permanent danger zone, along with a number of nearby lakeside villages in Batangas province.
Thousands of Afghans are trying to flee the country before the Taliban takes over as American forces complete their withdrawal from the country. They have been crowding the passport office in Kabul, Afghanistan, hoping to secure exit visas. Most Afghans don't have the money for passport or visas, but want to get out all the same.
Thousands of people have been crowding the passport office in Kabul, Afghanistan, hoping to secure exit visas. Most Afghans do not have the money for passports or visas, but want to get out all the same. One of them is Imtiaz Mohmand, whom together with 4 of his friends have paid a smuggler to sneak them across the border to Iran and into Turkey. Now authorities see a role for the international community in addressing the issue.
حمایت بین‌المللی جامعه بین‌المللی برای افغانستان همین خودش کافی است. یا نظامیش یا ملکیش هر کدامشان باشه با ما مشکل نیست. هدف ما این است که حمایتش داشته باشیم. البته در سطح افغانستان تمام مردم افغانستان چی زن چی مرد. ولی از حالی که رفتن یاست مردم تشویش دارن.
Afghanistan looks significantly different than it did in 2001 when American troops arrived in the wake of the 9/11 attacks to topple the Taliban. Today, most people have mobile phones, women are in the workforce, and there are mixed schools. The Taliban have sought to reassure Afghans they have nothing to fear, but many remain unconvinced.
به خاطر آمدن طالبا بسیار نگران هستیم ما خود ما به همین خاطر ما میخواهیم که پیش از اینکه اوضاع وخیم‌تر شود از اینجا بتانیم خود بیرون بکنیم.
تمام ولسوالی‌ها سقوط کردن. یک ولسوالی هم نماند حتی تا جایی رسیدن تا کماندانی تا ولایت‌ها رسیدن. آمدیم از پاسپورت بکنیم و به طرف از افغانستان برویم دیگه. هیچ جای امن نیست.
Meanwhile, outside the Turkish visa center in Kabul city center, the road is crowded with expensive vehicles belonging to wealthier people seeking a way out. The poorer Afghans have to board the buses to the western province of Nimros, aiming to cross illegally into Iran, Turkey, and finally to Europe.
Virgin Galactic's Richard Branson aims to beat fellow billionaire Jeff Bezos into space by 9 days. Branson's company announced Thursday that its next test flight will be Sunday, July 11th, and that its founder will be among the 6 people on board, all company employees.
The winged rocket ship will soar from New Mexico, the first carrying a full crew. In an announcement posted on social media, the thrill-seeking adventurer who turned 71 in a few weeks said he's always been a dreamer, and his mother taught him to never give up and to reach for the stars. This July, their dream will become a reality. Last week, Virgin Galactic got the Federal Aviation Administration's okay to start launching customers. More than 600 people already have reserved a ride to space. Meanwhile, plans to blast into space from West Texas on July 20th, the 52nd anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing. He'll be on the debut flight of a Blue Origin rocket with people accompanied by his brother, an aerospace pioneer and the winner of a $28 million charity auction.
Meanwhile, here on Earth, it's all about football and cats. Russia's cat oracle Achilles predicted a win for Spain over Swiss in the Euro 2020 quarterfinals match in St. Petersburg Friday.
The cat is one of the famous Hermitage cats who have lived on the grounds of St. Petersburg's Winter Palace since the 18th century to control mice. The cats now patrol the Hermitage Museum that is housed in the building, which houses Russia's largest collection of artworks. Achilles is deaf, and this circumstance developed a sense of prediction in him and contact with other people. Oh, and that makes Achilles not afraid of any noises. Before it was octopus and now it's cats.
Do you believe that Spain will win?
I don't know. If it's based on cats, I don't know. We'll have to see.
Have to see. All right, that will do it for us here on Asia Prime. I'm Ralph Tabubolon.
And I'm Amanda Chininta. We'll see you after the weekend on Monday back here on Asia Prime. Have a good night.
Metro TV. Selama tidak menjaga lingkungan, jangan mimpi lihat yang indah. Kurangi sampah dari rumah mulai sekarang. Peluit kick-off berbunyi, berita sepak bola paling panas sepekan terakhir segera dimulai. Ya, terjadi head-to-head di antara narasumber. Otak-atik obrolan membuat suasana semakin seru dan terjadi offside, saudara-saudara. Kita review dulu video dan info yang sedang viral. Tendangan baru saja dilakukan, umpan closing, ya dan gol! Berita terlengkap seputar sepak bola dalam dan luar negeri dalam 30 menit. Soccer Time, setiap Jumat jam 10 malam.
Buka pikiran Anda, perluas wawasan, dapatkan sudut pandang baru dari sosok-sosok inspiratif.
Unlock with Billy Boone, setiap Sabtu di pekan terakhir setiap bulannya.
Indonesia memiliki potensi ekonomi syariah terlengkap.
Bahkan kita diprediksi menjadi kiblat keuangan dan ekonomi syariah dunia.
Seperti apa ekonomi syariah Indonesia?
Bagaimana kita bisa mengubah dunia lewat ekonomi syariah?
Saya Zakia Arfan dengan ekonom sekaligus ahli dan praktisi keuangan syariah.
Saya akan membahasnya bersama narasumber terkemuka hanya dalam Syariah Economic Talk bersama saya Gunawan Yasni setiap Kamis jam 8 malam di Metro TV.
Selamat pagi, inilah headline news pukul 2 waktu Indonesia Barat. Kepala Badan Pengawas Obat dan Makanan BPOM, Penny Lukito, mengingatkan kepada masyarakat bahwa ivermectin merupakan obat keras. Ivermectin hanya dapat dikonsumsi dengan dosis tunggal dan setahun sekali. Selain itu, Penny menyatakan hingga saat ini keabsahan ivermectin masih sebatas obat cacing, bukan obat terapi penyembuhan COVID-19. Penny juga menyampaikan belum ada uji klinik yang membuktikan obat dari bahan kimia tersebut menyembuhkan pasien COVID-19. Menurutnya, efek samping dari obat berbahan kimia yang belum mendapatkan dukungan penelitian ilmiah akan sangat berbahaya. Oleh karenanya tidak bisa asal klaim bahwa obat cacing ini ampuh menyembuhkan pasien COVID-19. Penggunaan ivermectin harus persetujuan dokter dan dokter harus